Big win for the Detroit Pistons. Dennis Schroder and Cade Cunningham came up clutch in the end, both doing some unique things to be able to get Detroit the victory over the Charlotte Hornets. Detroit, I believe, moves to now 27-26, a game over 500, while Charlotte falls to 13-27. It's been a rough go for them. But like I said, Detroit almost lost a 28-point lead. That would have been historic. The biggest lead they've ever given up in their franchise history was 25. So I was just sitting there kind of worried those last 12 minutes of the game. Like, are they really going to blow this? And 28 is not a good number for the Pistons because, as we all know, last season they set the most consecutive games lost, and that was a 28-game streak. And if they would have lost the game tonight, I would have had to ask Isaiah Stewart to change his number because there's no way I would let anything with 28 in the building. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is Dennis Schroder. He only had 5 points and 3 rebounds. So when you're looking at the box score, it's not the sexiest thing you see out there. But when he was out there, he was providing really good minutes for this team. I don't know if a lot of people knew this. I did not before the broadcast, but Malik Beasley and Dennis Schroder have a really good relationship from when Schroder played in Atlanta. That was early in his career, and Beasley was in high school. They would hang out, they would connect, and they used to play on the Lakers together. So now they're able to reconnect now, and I think Schroder's first possession was an assist to Malik Beasley, and I think his second one as well. And early on in the game, he was able to kind of dictate the offense. There was one where he was points fan, kind of directing traffic, leading to a Ron Holland 3 right to the perfect spot because I know Ron Holland's a little streaky, so Dennis Schroder did everything he could to help him out there. And there was not a lot of time with Cade Cunningham and Schroder together on the floor, and I thought that was going to be something we would see a lot more of today, so we could see a lot more of Schroder's scoring ability, but it took all the way until what was it, like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter for them to come in together. And it led to a huge Dennis Schroder 3 after they were only up by 4. So if they didn't hit that, all the momentum was going to Charlotte. They were putting on huge runs to almost come back. They were behind Seth Curry. I almost said Steph Curry there. But Schroder with an amazing impact, and I'm excited to see what he can do as he kind of just grows with this team and is able to develop with these players. And I'd be really curious to see how his role is moving forward, if we're not going to see much of him and Cade together until maybe closing games, but that's something that's going to grow. And I mean, this is only the first game. There's not much we're going to be able to get from that. And moving over to the stat sheet for just a minute, I want to talk about Asar Thompson first. 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists tonight. He's been a reliable offensive weapon over these past 5, averaging 13, I think it's 0.4, 0.7 over that span. But that's great to see from Asar Thompson. His development, to me, has really depended on what can he do offensively. Showed off a really pretty Euro step, and I think him and Ron Holland both showed off some out-of-nowhere Euro steps and decelerations, and it was a beautiful sight to see. But with Asar, over these past 5 games, he's had 0 3-point attempts, and he's played a lot of minutes. I'm curious if a lot of that comes from the coaching staff, if that comes from his mindset, the game plan. I don't think it's something I really mind because he's able to swing the ball, he's able to get into the paint, he's able to drop it off down low, and I think the threat of him driving opens up for the perimeter, other perimeter players like Beasley and Cade, Tim Hardaway Jr. And I guess on the opposite spectrum there is Ron Holland, 1 for 6 tonight from 3. I don't want to say he's forcing it because I think he's taking good shots. I'm just curious if he can create better shots for others. The wide open ones, always take. But I'm just curious if maybe he's forcing the issue a little too bit. And a lot of those threes came when they were up in the 20s. So get your development reps. But that also leads to almost losing a 28-point lead. That's just something to keep monitoring at that point. But Tobias Harris with another under-the-radar 20-point game. But Malik Beasley, insane start. 11 points, I believe, in the first 6 minutes he played. And ending with 17, so a little bit slow there. And overall, just another game of Jalen Duren proving people wrong. 16 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, he was kind of delivering the ball to anybody who was open in the open court, plus 10 as well. I think he's had a little bit of a renaissance here, and he's always been a good player, but I think it's a lot of people question the effort. But I think recently you cannot question the effort. He's been a phenomenal basketball player. And looking at the schedule, I do think the Detroit Pistons have a good chance to kind of maintain that 6 seed and hold it. I mean, they have a potential to move up to that 5 seed coming up soon with Giannis being out until, I believe it's till after the All-Star break. So Detroit has a few games until then. I'm curious if they can kind of make up ground there. But I'm really more worried about Miami and Orlando. I do feel like if you're the 5 or 6 seed, you have a good chance to make it to the second round going against Indiana and New York. But if you're in the play-in and you have to go against Cleveland or Boston first round, I think that's just an exit. I mean, that's an early exit. Looking at some of these next 10 games for Detroit, they have 2 against Chicago, San Antonio, Atlanta, and then a Brooklyn and Utah with an LA, Denver, and Boston mixed in there. I mean, I think there's some cakewalks in there, but I think you can't take anything for granted. Detroit's been able to show that they can beat the bad teams, but they have to be able to compete against the high level ones, and that's something they've done. And you look at Orlando, they have some cakewalks as well. Atlanta twice, Charlotte, Washington, Toronto twice, and Chicago. In Miami, they have a tough go for their next 10. Boston, OKC, Dallas, Milwaukee, Indiana, New York, a part of there. I think that's just something that to look at. I think that's something to keep in mind because in 10 games from now, I think Detroit has a really good shot at still being the 6th seed with Orlando right behind and maybe Miami tailing off a little bit. And Milwaukee doesn't have an easy go either. I mean, their next 10, they have Golden State, Minnesota, Clippers, Washington's an easy one there. Miami, Houston, Denver, Dallas. I think Atlanta's a part of them. They have Dallas again. That might have been 11 there, but not an easy stretch for them either. And like last time, looking at some of these charts is really important when looking at how the game went and what kind of led to the victories. And look at this. Detroit almost blew their 28-point lead, like I mentioned, right over here. And they were wire to wire in front the whole time. But this is a case of Detroit letting off the gas and not continuing to pummel the Hornets. Because if you're up by 28, you should hope to win by 50. If you're up by 28 about halftime, you should hope to win by 50 points. Looking down, though, at the points in the paint, second chance, fast break, I mean, these are the 3 key stats I look at when it comes to a win or a loss, and it kind of just shows who puts in the effort. And when you're Charlotte, you can't win when you score 28 points in the paint. You just can't. It's unlikely, and they almost did. That would have been the one outlier for me. Second chance points, Detroit had 17, and fast break points, Detroit won by a pretty slim margin with 19. Overall, I mean, this was a great game to watch. I think Dennis Schroder's debut was great. I would have liked to see Lindy in there. I think he would have played if the game got a little bit more out of hand. The last point I want to make is Cade Cunningham looks 100% healthy. 19, 10, and 12. He was able to come back, kind of help Dennis Schroder get acclimated in that fourth quarter as he was getting more minutes in clutch time. A great game from Cade going into the All-Star break in a couple games. I'm excited to cover up with that coverage and kind of see how the Detroit Pistons do. We have Cade and Asar representing, and I think they're going to do really good in their respective competitions. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me. Hope to get some more guests on here pretty soon, and we have more Pistons content coming your way.